Hello and welcome to my next video tutorial. Today I'm going to present to you how to paint the blue robe and the armor of High Elf from Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. Many of you requested from me some tutorial about painting gold armor, and well, this is my answer for your questions. I also thought that this is the time to finally make another free video tutorial. You could probably already see my previous video tutorial that was about painting the Minas Tirith Archer. If not, check it out. It's a lot about painting steel NMM. And well, let's start working on this guy in here. So the first thing I do with my miniatures is that I take an ear pick, I soak it in brush cleaner, and then I gently roll over the surface that I'm going to paint. I'm doing this in order to remove small bits of grease that could appear on the surface of the miniature, and also in order to make the base color a bit softer, then the new layer of paint will easier stick to it. I bet you had sometimes situations when you are painting over the surface and the paint acts weird, it doesn't want to stick, it slides off it. So that's, if you do what I just presented to you, you can avoid that. And now I'm going to use Winsor Newton Series 7 size 2 brush for bigger surfaces. It's good to have a big brush and a small brush. Of course, big for big surfaces and a small one for the details. Forgive me for talking in a bit weirder way than usually. I guess I got flu during the last week, during this week, and I still cannot get well after that. Okay, so the consistency of paint that I'm going to use now looks like this. I cannot explain to you how to get this consistency. You need to simply see for yourself, adding a bit of water to it until you have something like this. And then before you start painting, you can make a photo of the miniature on your desk in order to see exactly where the light reflects on the armor. Or you can simply stay still for a moment, look on it like I'm looking right now, and you can see where the light reflects. It reflects in here, in here, in here, and many other places. You can simply follow this pattern. Right now, when I'm going to paint, you need to keep in your mind that the camera is in a bit different position than I am. So it reflects a bit differently for me than on the video, and I have to follow the pattern that I see. So yeah. So what I'm doing now is basically a sketch. Thanks to this step that I'm making now, it will be much easier for me later to don't lose focus where I should paint reflection and where shadows, etc. The thing is that if you will mark these reflections, the rest will be really easy. It's pretty hard to lose focus on the big picture when you already know where to paint reflections. But regarding the reflections that you can see on the miniature, you need to remember that the light reflects on surfaces in a bit different way than most people are painting. What I mean by that is that you have simply one really big reflection on pretty big part of the, in that case, armor. It doesn't go exactly from bright to dark. If you're painting like this, like simply going from bright to dark, you're not painting metal. You're painting something that I could call like matte plastic. Something like this could reflect the light in this way. Metal always is making reflection, strong reflection that is appearing suddenly. Of course, it depends on the level how polished the metal is. If you have matte metal, like for example, if you would be interested in painting this elf, like if he would be zombie or something like this, and his armor would be covered in rust, like let's say that it's fully covered in rust, then because the rust is very matte, you can go from bright to dark, or from dark to bright. It depends on if you're painting reflection or shadow first, and you can slowly go from one to another. But that's completely different situation, because then when it's rusted, it's not reflecting the light. But the more polished element, the sharper it gets, the more sudden reflection is. It's a rule that you should remember if you're willing to paint with non-metallics. Of course, this rule works on everything. If you would try to be really professional with metal paints, this rule applies as well. All of the painting is actually about placing light and shadow in the right places. And on metal, it's usually sudden. Yeah, forgive me all the shaking that you will see, that you, I guess you can see it already. I can feel, like I said, I have a fever, so it's not easy to paint right now. Okay, and now, when you are painting blue robe, the rules are similar. Like on every material, we've got places that are reflecting the light and places that are in shadows. Every material does that. But in that case, of course, it's not metal, so it will work in a different way. In that case, it will be simply smoother, going smoothly from bright to dark. At least that would look nice. And when you're painting non-metallics, it's good if you paint the rest of the elements in smaller contrast, because then the metallics on armor or weapon will simply look more realistic. Okay, and now the thing about cloths is that they are reflecting the light not only on convex places, but also on these that are concaved, but are, I don't know how to express it correctly in English, but that are facing the source of light in like flat way. It means that the material will be the darkest, not always in the deepest places, like in here. It will be dark here, but there are also places that will be less concaved. It will be concaved, but not very deep, so they will reflect the light a bit as well. And then the darkest place will be material on the sides of it. But so far I don't see any place like this on this miniature. So let's just mark these places that are reflecting the light. And you must not be scared of painting bigger areas with bright color. That's just how light works. If you want to be better at painting, I highly recommend you simply not watching on only miniatures, but see some paintings and see how people are painting with oils, stuff like this, because it is basically one and the same business. We're just working in 3D and they are working in 2 dimensions. I learned a lot just from watching paintings. Not tutorials. Nobody taught me anything. I was just looking how things are painted. And here's one of these places that I mentioned before. Here is the convex element that will be brightest. Here element will be darker, and here it will be brighter again because it has surface that would reflect the light. And here as well, because it's not very deep, but it gets deeper. The lower it gets, the less light will get to it. Another thing is that if you are using cork or any kind of handler, you need to remember that this is here in order to help you, not to be a problem. Like now, I just couldn't get to this element in here. And I sometimes just struggle, and then I remind myself that I could always take the miniature of the cork. I can even hold just in my hand. I don't know, maybe you don't have problems like this. I sometimes do. I just forget things that I can do more than just do what I do. Like I said, many of things that I will say today might be hard to understand because of the fever. Sorry for that. I hope that you still get what I try to present to you by just looking on what I do. Okay, another very important thing about painting metallics is that this, what I marked right now with white color, are something that I call the main reflections. This is where the light reflects directly. Like these are the biggest reflections. But on metal, there are always, and on every other element, material, it depends on the light. There's also another reflection that is coming from the light that is reflecting on object and then another object, and then it's reflecting again on other element. So we will need reflections in shaded areas as well. But first, I think I will paint these elements with base colors that supposed to be really dark. Not I'm not going to use now the darkest color that I'm interested in. I'm just going to use color that is almost the darkest, so I could paint on it reflections, brighter elements, but also make it a bit darker if I will need to. And when you're painting anything, remember to first paint these elements that are concave and then start working with convex elements, because if you will make it in other order, you will simply ruin your work. It's inevitable. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. I mean that you will most probably ruin something that you already painted. Most of you probably know about this, but I have to consider that some of you might be new to all of what I'm presenting right now. Okay, so yeah, I need another layer of white paint for these reflections on the cloth that's supposed to be bright, like really bright. White is helpful not only to let you don't lose the whole thing of light and shadow on the miniature, but it also allows me to have more saturated and better looking colors. Yeah, as you can see, painting these white reflections can take a while, but it's worth it, I promise you. Okay, I will make this white a little bit better of the camera to save you some time. See you in a moment. Okay, so I painted it for a bit longer. The better quality white sketch you make, the easier it will be to create nice saturated color. But now let's start working with base colors. For blue, I'm going to use as the base. I'm going to use dark Prussian blue from model color value. Of course, it exploded. And I will simply try to paint these areas that are not marked with white color. I guess I don't have to tell you that it's always better to apply more thin layers than smaller amount of thick ones. So yep, that's what I'm doing now. Okay, I'll apply at least 2 more layers of the camera, so see you in a moment. Okay, so this is how it looks like after I applied 2 more layers. As you can see, it's very dark. One of the reasons is because it's on black base color, but thanks to that I will not need to make anything darker, and this is very good actually. It will work much better for me in the end. And now the base for gold, ochre brown. From what I saw on the movie, their armors are now not actually gold. But in the meantime, I'm going to mix my color with this tool that is called Color Shaper. Use it instead of your paintbrush, because you will kill your paintbrushes if you will use them for mixing. Okay, so the armor in the movie is not actually golden. As you can see in the shadows, it's green, so I guess it's some kind of brass, which is not very good material for armor, but well, I don't know, maybe it's some special brass that is more resistant than normal brass. Okay. Now I will do the same thing. I need to simply paint everything that is not painted with white. Okay, now I will apply, I think, one more layer of the camera. So see you in a moment. Okay, so this is how it looks like now. And what we need to do next is, of course, to paint these white areas. So let's start with blue. I'm going to use scale color sky blue, but you can use any other brand. It's not like I'm really bound to this. I just bought it like a long time ago and I didn't found any other paint that would have similar color. It's good color. You can use it, but remember that you can use any other brand. It's all about having similar color. Okay, and like I said, it's time to paint white areas on the robe. I'm not really used to scale color paints. I haven't used this blue probably in years. I can see that its consistency is a bit different than what I'm used to. Okay, that's of course just the first layer. I will need to apply, I guess, two more. Okay, so let's go to reflections on gold. For that I'm going to use yellow ochre and I will mix it with white paint. I could use some reddy color. I will used to use golden yellow, something like this, golden yellow, I guess. And I recently bought a new bottle of it, and it looked basically completely different. So all in all, it's easier to mix your own paints sometimes. Well, so right now, what I want to create is to create very pale and very bright yellow. And yellow ochre is less saturated than ochre brown. That's why I choose it. So as you can see, it's yellowish. So the armor is going to be very contrastful. So this will look good, especially on small pictures. And if you are playing, then I recommend you painting with stronger contrast, because then the miniatures will simply be more, details on the miniatures will pop out. They will be better visible. The bigger miniature we're painting, the smaller contrast we can create. Of course, it depends on the detail, because like I mentioned before, when you're painting metallics, non-metallics, of course, I mean non-metallics, but you know, metal elements, like I mentioned before, you need to create reflection. if it's supposed to be shiny. As you can see, thanks to white base color, everything will be bright and nicely saturated right now. If you would try paint with color over, if you would try to paint this reflection simply over dark base color, it would actually take you more layers and more time than if you would start with painting white base color for them. Okay, now I will make like 2 more layers of these colors of the camera and see you in a moment. Okay, so this is how it looks like now. In my opinion, it already starts to look metallic because, as you can see, we simply marked 3 reflections and it starts to work. So what we need to do now are finally the first layers of colors. And this is the one where you need to decide if you want to go with cold or warm colors on the armor. I would recommend going with cold because of the movie. So in order to do that, there. Okay, it doesn't look good. Sorry. So let's mix ochre brown. I need to first add to it tiny amount of black in order to make it greenish. And as you can see, I added way too much. You just want to make it look a bit green. That's all. So you need to add small amount of black. Okay, now it is pretty good. Now it's important to mix it with white. As you can see, we have this bright but greenish mixture now. and it is going to be a new layer for metallics. Now you need to paint with it layers on the edges of existing reflections. And you can already use it for painting mentioned by me before, reflections in the shadows. And now I'm going to make here reflection a bit longer with this color, because, well, that would be bright, but reflection, the main bright reflection would be here, just like I painted, but this detail would be also bright. Okay, now of course I need to have reflection on the bottom of the helmet, because the helmet is rounded, and here the reflection has to have such shape. This reflection is very important to make the helmet look metallic. Okay, now I need to make sure that these reflections are not too big, because the shadow in here is also very important. Okay, now it's time to make a very dark color for armor. Yeah, maybe I should have put it in here. Okay, now I will paint darkest shadows. Okay, on this part it will be better visible. I think I can make stronger reflection in here. Okay, because I already have all the mixtures in here, I think it's time to start blending. As you may know, I'm painting tiny stripes with brighter color over darker layer. And that being said, I will simply show you what I'm doing. But first, it's important to make midtones from what we already have. So let's try to mix these two colors in something like 50-50 proportion. And now it's good to have a really good tip of your brush. Because now I will paint simply really tiny stripes going down from up to down around, and I'm painting a little over the bright reflection and a bit over the darker layer. Thanks to that I will have a smooth blend. I would like to now say that I can make it much smoother, but I won't, because this video would take much more time, and I want to present to you the technique and the idea. So unfortunately I won't blend it as smooth as I can. You can spend really a lot of time on blending. Okay, and now I take the brightest color and I will do the same on this water I already created. See, now it's really smooth. Now, see, I want to have another mid-tone for the reflections in the shadows. Remember that you can barely touch the surface of the model with your paintbrush, and then you leave very small amounts of paint. And when you do that, the blendings are becoming really smooth. Remember that the more midtones you create, the smoother blendings will go. And you can always dilute your paint more. I was saying something about not blending as well as I can, but I got sucked into it. The more time you spend on it, the smoother the transitions will be. Okay, now I will blend the helmet because, well, you already saw how blend these elements, so I will make the rest of them of the camera. Of course, you can start with darker tones. Like I said before, let me mention it once again. The more midtones you will mix on your wet palette, the easier and better this step will go. Oh, my hand started to shake so much. Oh, it's not easy. Ooh. Okay, now let me blend more of the camera because we don't have much time and we need to focus on the blue robe. So see you in a moment. Okay, so in the meantime, I finished blending the rest of the reflections, and I also made black lining that you can see. It already looks much better. Yep. So now what's left is, of course, the blue robe. Okay. And for painting it, I for sure will need medium blue. And unfortunately, it's stuck. I didn't use this paint in a long time. Yep, this is what happened. I'm surprised that it didn't explode. That would be more something that I expected. Okay, so now I need to paint layers with this medium blue paint. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but I don't want this blue robe to be too bright. So this blue that I already prepared is going to be many situations just the base for medium blue. As you can see, medium blue compared to this previous blue is pretty dark, but it's also because I'm painting with it over a pretty dark color. That is Prussian blue. And now remember the reflection that I painted in here with white paint? Now it's time to mark it again. Okay, now royal blue. And try that as well. Oh, of course. I was expecting that. You need 1 drop, you get 12. It's almost the same. So let's go back for Prussian blue. Problems with this blue, always problems. What's with this one now? Okay, so I need to fix shapes a little. Okay, so now it's finally time for some mixing. And because I have plenty of real blue, I'll mix it with a bit of Prussian blue. And now with this mixture, I can blend the darkest layers. I'm painting in the same way like on gold NMM. As you can see, it goes much easier than with yellow. It's not because it's easier in any way, but our eyes just don't see every scratch, every stripe just as good as it was visible on yellow color. That's why it's way quicker to do. And as you can see, once again, I created color that is between this brighter and darker thanks to this. When I'm blending the spaces between them, I'm making the side of the darker layer a bit brighter and the side of brighter layer a bit darker. So it works really great. The consistency of this paint is a bit weird. Okay, now the one that I've been waiting for, which is mixing sky blue with medium blue. So of course I want to have a color that will be 50-50 between them. But it's not easy because it's not always 50-50 mixing, because paints have different amount of pigments in them. So you need to try to mix them drop by drop. Drop by drop. So, drop by drop, I guess. You need, of course, to have good tip for this. So in many places I will paint over this sky blue layer, because in many places many of them are simply too bright, but like I mentioned before, sky blue was just a base color for the next colors. And some will be left like this because they are bright and they're supposed to be bright. Now pure sky blue. See, it's going pretty good. I must say that blending with this scale color paint is really easy and cool. Now I'm thinking about that. I think that maybe I should try other paints, because this works really well with my technique. Of course, my technique works with all the brands, but it's just interesting. The consistency is more oily, and this makes my stripes that I'm painting with every move of my brush more blurry, while this painted with Vallejo has more sharp edges. Of course, it's not that I think that this is better, but this is very interesting effect that could be very useful on some details, like when I'm painting the face of a miniature. Then such blurry edges could be, if rather, even better thing than what I'm creating now. This part definitely needs to be darker. Oh, we're so close to the end. It's a mess. But unfortunately, I am perfectionist, so I need to fix this. Okay, it's done. Okay, so this is how my High Elf from Lord of the Rings range looks like after I blended all of the layers. So in conclusion from today's tutorial, you could have learned how I paint gold armor and how I painted blue robe. And all of this is possible thanks to the support of my awesome patrons on Patreon. And I want to thank you all very much for your support. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial and see you on the next one. Bye.